It was hard to wake up. I'm not gonna lie.
Kuli was still sleeping, by the way. Kuli thought he was still sleeping right here in the studio.
No, I had to get up here. But I appreciate you, Michael, joining us, man. I really love you, man. You know that. I'm so lucky enough to be surrounded by guys like you, including you and Tate, and also some of the people I know in the community here in Danbury. You know. Is the good thing about it is that whenever we have conversations, you know, they bring certain things.
Yes.
And some of the things we relate to each other, you know. It's unbelievable how much we relate to one another, you know what I mean? And the thing is, people think about it, diaspora. It's not only just the diaspora as the only people that were misplaced were the people in, was it in Israel?
Yeah.
But
it's everywhere.
It's everywhere, man.
It's everywhere.
I was so surprised that as much as I dislike plantain, cooked fried banana, but the thing is, there's so much that we relate to each other when it comes to cuisine, music, you know what I mean?
It comes to have someone cook it right for you, that's what it is.
Oh, say that again, Michael. I think that's like, you're right. It ain't been cooked right. So wait, I always mess up the name. So it's a sweet plantain.
It's both. Well, it's actually first is a green plantain, but you know, once it's like a fruit, you know, if you give it time, you let it sit, it gets sweet. But there's different types of banana.
So it's really a banana.
It's a banana.
You know, growing up, so it's funny Kuli says this, and for those tuning in right now, here we are, it's a Sunday, and we're talking about bananas being cooked. Growing up in South Africa, I could never imagine a banana being cooked, right? And then you move to America and you eat, you know, for me, the cuisine of my Latino fellow brothers and sisters is yummy as ever. So when you get a chance to do this and you're telling Kuli Uti he just hasn't had cooked right, what is the perfect way to cook a plantain?
Well, I mean, a green plantain, I mean, there's different ways. The Dominicans, we have, I don't know, probably a few dozen ways of cooking it. but the most traditional is fried plantains. The green plantain is fried twice.
Okay, fried twice. Take notes if you're out there, by the way. Grab your paper. Fried twice.
You know, well, different Latino cultures call it different things. We call it, Dominicans call it tostones.
Tostones.
So you take the green plantain, you slice it however you feel.
Yeah.
And then you deep fry it for a few minutes just to get the outer crust crispy. Take it out, you mash it, and then you fry it again. And that's where you get the good consistency of a tostón.
What do you know? We got a cooking show. I think we just got a new segment of the Homeway Show. A cooking show, and now I'm feeling all hungry. But yes, man, a lot going on. And as Kuli said, you know, we all have so much in common. And we've introduced this diaspora conversation over the last 2 months or so since we came back on the air this year. And for me, I won't lie, it wasn't a term that I was too familiar with, and I had to do a little bit of research. And to Kuli's point, we've dubbed, you know, African diaspora, but you've just mentioned Dominican. So tell us a little bit about where you're from, Michael.
Well, I'm from New York. I was born and raised in Brooklyn. My parents are both born from the Dominican Republic.
Okay.
And they came here, and it was really interesting because when Kuli mentioned diaspora, you know, we came to that conversation. I was like, what does that mean? You know, so, you know, I originated from the Jews, and and I guess I could relate to that term because my parents came from the Dominican Republic to find a better life.
Yeah.
You know, and they left everything behind. They started brand new. Literally, like, my dad came here with like 2 pairs of clothing and I don't know how much, maybe like little to nothing, and made it. You know, so I try to put myself in that position, and like I see like the growing economies like China, for example. Let's say I wanted to leave the U.S. and go to China.
Yeah.
How would I just go in with
and just pick up
clothing and make no money, learn Chinese, and try to, you know what I mean?
And learn the culture and adapt.
That's really something that we need to speak more about because it happens everywhere, and I think we can all relate to a certain extent on.
We can, man, and I'm sure faith had a lot to do with that, right? Like, I think about your father back in those days, packing up and leaving. You want to talk about a leap of faith, right? It's something that you haven't seen, you haven't heard, but you're believing that it's going to happen.
Yeah, you're being told that the U.S., you know, the the streets are paved in gold.
So wait a minute. For all the African people, we've heard this too, man.
Right?
We pictured. I used to hear that cars would be just parked and you just got in and took whatever car you wanted in America. You just drive it and leave it.
Yeah,
Not true. That's
imagine?
stealing a car, by the way.
But definitely, I think I tried to do some research on my heritage, and from my father's side, I believe that like going up like 4 or 5 generations is Spaniard.
Okay.
From my mother's side, I wasn't able to find too much, but I do know that my mother's father, he's dark skinned. He's very, very dark skinned, and so it led me to kind of try and search, and I'm really interested in doing like those DNA things.
The family tree stuff.
Because definitely, because I feel like I must have either some indigenous blood in me or even some African. I don't know.
I almost guarantee you do, brother. It's funny you say that because you could look just about in any any country in the world, you will find somebody who's very, very dark, right, of that culture. You could go to Greece, for instance, and you would find somebody who I truly believe somewhere deep down inside there is that little bit of African blood in them.
Definitely.
It's amazing, man. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, and I want to expand on the faith piece as well, right? Because that's something that means a lot. But here we are. We moved the clocks forward. We had a nor'easter, so we had a lot of snow this past week. It was 60 degrees just 2 weeks ago. You want to talk about confusion, right? Here we are in short sleeves. The next thing, we got snow, we're shoveling, and now we are back to some more snow tomorrow. But there's a lot going on in the world that I also want to talk about, not even necessarily in the world. I want to talk a little bit more about what the kids are going to be doing March 14th. If you recall back, not that long ago, unfortunately, there was a shooting out in Florida. Very, very disturbing situation. But I'm very proud of what kids are doing, man. Kids are standing up right now and saying they are going to walk out of schools. It's an organized walkout. On March 14th, nationwide, so even in New Hampshire, I was looking, a lot of the superintendents, this is something that has been organized and approved by schools. And I look at us, I think about this. Do you guys think when you were in high school, you would have been organizing something of that nature, right? Something that actually has a cost to it. Not to say we want more gym time or we want this. These kids are saying we want to be safe at schools.
You know what, just to jump in there, where I grew up, we actually did have something like...
Oh, boy.
You know what, one of the worst things that didn't happen for me in high school, and I'm going to say this, I went to a school back in South Africa, Nongoma, called Mkitegi, and it was it's actually a very, very good high school. Mm-hmm. It's pretty nice now, and they have a very good academic record.
Nice.
But let me tell you something, man, because when we had metric, we call it in South Africa,
senior,
which is like
senior, 12th grade.
Exactly,
yep.
12th grade. And then we actually organized some sort of protest against Afrikaans. Afrikaans is like a language that was introduced to us. It's like a dialect of Dutch.
Dutch, yes.
You know the history of South Africa with apartheid. So anyway, the principal didn't give us the prom. What do you guys call prom? We
metric dance.
Metric dance.
Yeah.
Or what else? There's another way they do it. Farewell
party. Yeah.
They didn't organize it for us, man.
Because they were mad.
We never had it because we actually organized a really good protest.
Nice.
It turned everything around. And actually, I don't know, this is kind of maybe sick that I'm saying this. I'm actually proud of it.
No, you should be.
I'm proud, not that I'm proud that we're walking out against Africans, but just the fact that we had some serious grievances against the actual language and against the way it was taught to us, and we are presenting them properly, and we didn't fight anybody. We actually just honestly brought some good grievances, and I think that's why the school was so mad, because we were that good.
Yeah.
The only thing is that the casualty on the whole middle of the whole thing was the teacher that was teaching it.
Oh.
Because we came through him to protest, and what does that mean to him?
It's a tough situation.
And even today, dude, I don't think this guy will speak to me when we bump into each other in the road. I don't want to say exactly the details of what happened, but Yes, we actually.
They probably put a whooping on him.
Yeah,
they probably put a whooping on him.
You know, it was tough, man. It was sad. But anyway, Mr. Maba, so just in case you're watching this, I want to say that, brother, at the time when this happens, we had some good points, and Sipo and all of you guys went to high school with. We had some good points, and we should be proud. But what I'm trying to say is that when the kids are doing right now, I don't know if maybe growing up in a country like South Africa, where you grew up, there was already a protest.
Yeah.
At 2 years old, there was already something going on in the streets with apartheid. So it wasn't anything new to me when I hear that the kids wanna, you know what I mean? They wanna protest.
Yeah.
They are coming over to Washington to talk to these guys. I think that especially South African kids have done that a lot of times. You know what I mean? We have actually rallied the cages. We have actually rallied the status quo and make sure that they understand that we have a point.
True.
So what they are doing right now. What they are doing right now is nothing new, but the good thing about that is happening now in America is that it's teaching the kids to be more involved. So then we're not going to have a situation where an 85-year-old man is running for the president. We're
not going to entertain that today. We're not going to talk about that today.
No. I'm just saying, in the case of an older man running for the president, that means it's going to go lower and lower because age-wise. Because you think about it. Which are these two Cuban brothers that are in Congress right now? I forgot their names.
Don't go testing my
I forgot. I don't know if you know them. They're from Texas. They are from Texas. Two Cuban brothers, very young. So what I'm trying to say is that seeing them being involved, it's just so refreshing. Honestly speaking, I won't be surprised in the future if we have a. How old is the mayor of one town somewhere in Pennsylvania? I think they have like a 20-year-old.
You hit me with some quizzes today, but I don't know my man. You're going to have me go on Google in a minute.
I'm just trying to prove my point. Actually, I probably talked too long.
No, you are good. You are good.
But what I'm trying to say, guys, is that this is good that the kids are involved in politics. They're starting to talk about it because what is going to happen, then they're going to start to seek for the office as they grow older. And that's good. That's good.
Hopefully. Let me ask you. In the Dominican, so have you been to the Dominican Republic? You have. How often do you go?
Well, last time I went was a few years, maybe about 4 years ago when my brother got married. Well, remarried, because he got married through the church. He was married civilly with his wife. Okay. And,
so did he have like a tradition? Did you go back home to have a traditional wedding, or?
I think it was more because, it's more of a themed wedding because it was obviously a tropical area, but, it was probably something that they both wanted to do.
Absolutely. So now, when we talk about faith, right? And I was talking earlier, thinking about your dad, that he moved all the way over here, took a leap of faith. It paid off because here you are sitting, grown man, working hard, thinking about how do I make an impact in the future. What role has faith played in your life as you found yourself? Because you're American, right? You grew up here.
Sure.
What role has faith played in your life, and how did your father make sure that he passes that torch on to you?
My parents always made us work very hard. That was something that was always ingrained in us. He wanted us to go to school. I think that was a big part too. My parents were not fortunate enough to go to school. They were forced to work at a young age. My mother was at a young age as well, forced to work and help out. So I think the frustration of
Michael, I'm sorry. Shout out to your mom, though, dude. I know your mom, and what a wonderful woman she is. Is she running for the elections for the union at the hospital?
I don't think so.
You don't think
He's
so?
breaking news over here.
Well, I know.
Maybe he knows something you know.
I don't know.
You don't know.
You better ask Mom what's going on. I thought I saw her name somewhere, but anyway.
She likes to know what's going on. I think she goes to the meetings and whatnot, but I don't think she's that I know of.
Yeah, but she's a good woman. I know her. Yeah, go ahead, Michael. I'm sorry, boss. I'm sorry.
No, I have a lot of respect. And the older you get, and when you start having kids and start growing your own family, you realize how important it was to receive those things, like to teach you how to work hard. I'm not scared to work. And I'm not scared, for example, if I get to a certain plateau and I lose it, I'm not scared to start over. You know what I mean? So
yes.
So if it wasn't for my parents teaching me that and to work, I wouldn't be where I am. You know.
Now let me ask though, because we talk about working hard a lot, and there are some people who work hard, but it doesn't seem to pay off. So there's a difference between working hard and working smart.
Sure.
And I think it's a combination of those two, right? Because you could have somebody who was putting in 60 hours a week.
Yeah.
And they are tired, they're exhausted, they are compromising their family life, they are compromising their health. And then you could have somebody who's working smart because they say, you know what, I'm going to pick up a job over here and I'll do something else that has a passion. So, I think people have to really be mindful of that, right? And I think for our listeners, always thinking about what can I do to separate myself and challenge myself. Like you said, you can reach a plateau. You can go into a job on an entry level, kick butt, become a rock star, and then eventually you are going to become somebody who has to start all over again. Definitely. You can't be afraid of that.
Yeah, and I don't want to talk like conspiracy theories, but I do feel that society kind of plays a role in that sense where they kind of scare you to jump out of your box. And they say, the 9 to 5 is safe. It's safe, and then you might have an idea, a hobby or something that they might want that could, become something better, and then you never follow through with it because you're scared. You might have a kid, and you're like, "Oh, I have to pay rent, I can't risk.
I can't pursue
losing this to follow something that I don't know what's going to be.
What's the payoff? I read something this week that the number one mistake that a lot of people make is if something doesn't have money associated with it, they won't pursue it. Meaning that if it doesn't have a paycheck attached to it. So if your friend was to come to you, if I came to Kuli right now and say, Kuli, I want to start growing sweet plantains, which means bananas, right? I want to start growing the bananas. But I'm like, Kuli, we're not going to make any money right away, right? We're fortunate enough. Michael has hooked us up with some good recipes, but we have to work. And we become passionate about it. If you don't see the vision to say, well, geographically, maybe that we have a large Latin community and also African community that will consume this, you might turn an eye and say, I'm all set. 5 years down the line, you don't know what comes out of that. You have to pursue a passion, whether it's in acting, maybe it's drama. And I think for parents, my parents did the same thing. Go to school, go to school, go to school. But I like to be a little controversial and say that's not enough. We need to do more. We can't just tell our kids, go to school, go to school, go to school. How about pay attention to Junior and see what Junior does? Maybe Junior is really good at organizing things.
You hit the nail.
Right?
Yeah, and I agree. If I don't mean to,
please go ahead.
Off, but I believe this, for example. I think that education is in the eye of the beholder. For example, you might find a doctor who is very good at his or her trade, and they're very good at medicine and whatnot, and they went to school, they went 10 plus years specialized in their field. Yet you can break down, you could get out of your job, for example, you're that doctor, just for hypothetical, you get out of your job, you're tired, your car breaks down, and then you go to the mechanic, and then you go to this guy who never graduated from high school, but he hears a noise, he hears something, he's just like,
knows what's going on.
I know exactly what's wrong with that.
Instantly.
So you tell me, is that mechanic educated or not? Maybe not traditionally.
Not book educated, but he's got a skill set.
But that mechanic knows what he's doing.
And you know what's funny?
Her,
thank you for saying her. Shout out to our lady listeners. We appreciate our ladies out there always listening. But what's interesting is, that same mechanic, I bet you when they were young, they probably got in trouble because they were always taking things apart. They get a new toy, they want to fix it, they want to do this, and they probably got in trouble. It wasn't until they got older that they realized. So I think for parents is to really manifest and say, how do I recognize that my child has a certain talent and how do I nurture that? And I see education going that route as well.
Sure.
I definitely do.
But it's also, if you think about it, we all have, maybe not traumas, but certain things that have happened to us in the past that we kind of are scared that we might pass that to the next generation. So when you have kids, you're just like, oh, I don't want you to do what I did. So maybe this led me to do this mistake, so you're going to say, don't do this. So maybe that is probably in the back of the mind of the parent. And,
always try.
Michael, that's a question. I know when I'm going to ask this kind of questions, I have to prepare myself because
I have to prepare myself.
Oh my God!
I have to prepare myself.
He doesn't want me to go to this kind of conversation. But listen, we have to agree somehow. I mean, I'm a black man living in America. I have to agree somehow that the curiosity.
Wait, you're black?
Oh, I am.
I'm joking. I'm joking. I didn't know. My bad joke of the day.
But anyway, you know, the curiosity of the Latino mind when it comes to things like handy stuff. And because you guys build buildings, you know, you guys, and most of it, those people don't even have the education like you were saying. And they just like picked it up and look at, you know, the crops and the things that they do, man. The sacrifice.
Work well with their hands, yeah.
You know, with their hands. Is it something that, I know probably there's a lot of differences from you as somebody of Dominican diaspora to Mexican diaspora, but are you guys like encouraged by family or at home to actually be handy or to use your hands? Because I've had a guy that fixed my car, like you were talking about car. He has never been to school.
Actually knows
Mexican dude
about
back
that.
in California,
Yeah.
But he knows even the names. He might know them in Spanish, the parts. Actually, he knows what part that need to, you know what I mean? But he knew all of that without actually being in class. Is it something that is encouraged to you guys? Because this is where I say myself, you know, when people say, oh, you know, Hispanics, go back to your own country, whatever. I said, dude, hey, you might tell Pablo to go back, but you know what, Pablo? Dean actually charged me the extra 50 for the education that he got for his mechanic experience.
Yeah, for the
he charged me
certificate.
just the only 100.
Yeah.
But he fixed it better than the guy that had an education.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So is it something that I'm sorry, just
I mean, I can only really speak for myself, but going back.
You are
to,
very handy too. I'm saying this because Michael can do some crazy stuff because you build stuff.
Yeah, I know a little bit.
Your dad too is a construction guy, right?
Yeah. My dad came to this country knowing construction. My dad and my grandfather actually built the church. A Catholic church in the Dominican Republic in our hometown, and it's still there.
Still stands.
Wow.
Yeah, it's still standing.
So did you get to see it when you were home?
Oh
Yes,
my God, that's a proud moment, man.
So my I guess it's something that's it's part of my bloodline to be somewhat handy, and of course my dad, like I said earlier,
Instilled that in you
he
guys.
instilled the work habit. And since I was young, I would come get out of school. My dad would pick me up, and I'd go straight to work with him. You know, I didn't.
You didn't get time to go play outside and go crazy.
Not as much as the average American kid, you know, that would go home and play video games. You know, I didn't see that until I was older, and then I started. You know what I mean? Like
doing your own thing. It's one of those things, and for those listening, people, I am the least handiest person. I'm horrible. I know how to change my tires.
You can clean the pool.
I know, yes. I've become very good at cleaning my pool, and it's only over the last 2 years that I've become good, but I can't lie and say
Shout out to Hillary for
I was going to say, shout out to my wife. My wife certainly helps me out quite a bit. Actually, I will admit, live on air, and you know, especially in the midst of the Me Too movement in Hollywood, empowering women and so forth, my wife, man, her father was also somebody who built houses. And she has a brother. Now, you would think that the brother would have been the one to pick up the skill, but he wasn't. My wife was. My wife spent summers they would go to Hampton Beach. He'd be working on houses. So, dude, when stuff breaks at the house, I'm not ashamed to say this. I'm not afraid. She does the fixing. I'll grab the iron and I'll iron the crap out of something. That I can do. Don't judge. Don't judge.
No, brother. You know what,
Judge.
Michael? I'm sorry. That is actually a very good point that he said this because, you know, growing up African, you know what I'm saying. Like this is not.
And I could probably relate as a Hispanic too. I mean, it's a machismo thing.
Yeah, you couldn't say that because you'll be like, guys will be like, what? Your wife? What is wrong with you? You know what I mean? But you know, I'm glad that you could say that. I very respect that, man. I respect that, bro.
She's strong. She's strong. Go ahead, man.
No, I respect that. You know, and we're living a new generation, so things are changing. You know, women are getting much more rights than than they did back then, and it's a equality thing.
Well, hold on now. Here's the thing, as we talk about equality, because I also read something interesting this week. So if we are saying, and this is a question, so for our listeners, please go to our social media platforms. Cooley will give those out in a moment too, and share on your thoughts on this. If we are saying that we want equality, and I do want that, I have a daughter, I have sons.
Sure.
How does it work though? So if I'm saying, okay, I get a job, I truly believe if a woman is qualified as I am, or I'm qualified as she is, we should earn similar salaries, right? So that's equality. I still believe in holding the door open for a woman. I think that's just chivalry, which is not dead. But then, if we are saying we're all equal, if something is heavy, should I then say, hey, we're equal? Go ahead and pick it up. Huh? If something is extremely heavy, why then does the equality thing then go away? And we are saying, and this is not me, people. I saw this somewhere in the interweb land over the week, but I thought it was such a great point of, if you personally as a woman are saying I'm equal, and then all of a sudden is, I need to pick up the ladder or something like that, is it fair to look at the woman and say, no, we're equal, my love, go ahead, you do it?
No, I think you have to take it to a certain extent. But I understand where you're coming from, though. Like, it's like, for example, I mean, only a mother could give breast milk. So,
True.
and so
we play our roles, I guess.
So I think we as male and female both have roles that we can identify there. Like, only a woman can do this, only a man can do this. But when it comes to things that traditionally men did, like that women are, if they want to be able to do, that they can certainly do it. I'm all for it, But yeah, I'm really traditional when it comes to a couple of things like that.
I like it, man. I like it. Now, you spoke of that your father built a church, and it was a Catholic church. He helped. Now, give him the credit, man. Yeah. But it was a Catholic church, right?
Yes.
So you're of Catholic descent, I take it, or?
Yeah. I was definitely raised Catholic. Mm-hmm. I did lose my faith at a young age. I saw a lot of I don't know if you want to say corruption or misleading, but I was young and I questioned certain things, and then later on in the years, recently, actually a few years ago, I met the person who is my wife today.
Shout out to your wife.
Shout out to Kenya.
Yay, Kenya. Wait, her name is Kenya?
Her name is Kenya, just like the country.
Oh, so I didn't like that.
But it's spelled differently.
Love it. Yeah.
I love it.
So,
I love it. I didn't know. I know her too. Shout out to Kenya.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So she's Ecuadorian and I'm Dominican. But what happened was, we met, we started dating, and then I could, at that point I considered myself agnostic, where I believed in something bigger than us. I just didn't know
what to put.
Who it was. It Muhammad? Was it Jesus? Etc. And later on, after I found out that she was actually praying for me to find the truth, and during that time, I felt like I found it. Things happened to me that that are probably personal to me, that I can only understand because it happened to me. I may not have physical evidence,
but that connection.
But things happened to me that I found the faith again, and it led me back to the church. But that's just that's what happened to me.
The Catholic, so I'm Christian. I'm a born-again Christian. We're still trying to figure out what Kuli is. Nobody knows. We don't know. We don't know.
I'm a scholar. I'm a Christian scholar. I like to stand right in the middle. If the war broke out, I can take either direction.
You cannot be double-minded, man. You have to plant your foot one way. But
I was raised in a very what do you call it? No,
you strike me as a
what was that?
Prosperity. This is where my English runs away. When we get to those words like prosperity, I can't say that word.
But anyway, go ahead, brother. I have a point too on Catholicism. I don't know you. I just cut you off.
No, you didn't. I think so. What I was going to say is I'm of Christian belief, and at the end of the day, I think to your point, I don't care if at this point believe in something. You cannot believe that you are just it. I think that's the biggest thing that I have trouble with, is some folks who say there is no God, there's nothing, it's just all biological, science and so forth. Somebody had to create us. Somebody had to be creative enough to say an ear is going to hear, an eye is going to see. And I believe it, for me, it's God. Now, in a sense, I believe that Catholic has that same foundation. But what I see is the Pope plays such a big role. Like, Christians don't have somebody who we see physically on TV and says that's the representation of Christianity as a whole.
At times it comes off as that's God.
Well, God is, I don't want to get preachy over here. I don't want to take us to church because I believe.
No, I'm just saying, I mean, at times the Catholic religion kind of make it feel like that's God.
I thought you were talking about Morgan Freeman a second. When you said God, because we were talking about that earlier, because it confuses God with Morgan Freeman sometimes, but it's fine. But what is the role of the Pope for those that might not be, understanding Catholicism? What is the role of the Pope in a sense?
We have to go back to the Bible, and we have to understand that Jesus in the Bible made Peter the first Pope, based on scriptures. So you have to understand.
Peter was a disciple.
Yeah, Peter was one of the 12 disciples. And his name was not Peter. His name was Simon.
Simon, yeah.
And Jesus called him Peter. And in Greek, Peter is Petros, which means rock. So he said, I will call you Peter, and on this Petra. So he said, I will call you rock, and on this rock I will build my church. So, okay. I mean, I think I have a quotation here.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Go ahead, man.
My brother came through with the notes. I'm not going to hear some shuffling of some papers right now. This man Michael getting busy with the notes. So, Petro, I know a guy named Petro, so now it makes sense. It's Peter, I didn't know that. You learned something. We don't have a name for Peter in Zulu.
I just tell you something that.
Sure.
Okay,
what's wrong about using Google, dude? Just Google it. It's gonna tell you. Go ahead,
this was actually taken from Cardinal Gibbons from the Faith of Our Fathers. I don't want to say this is my own.
Sure.
So I don't want to plagiarize.
We'll give him the credit. Absolutely.
So this is what he said. He said the Catholic Church teaches that our Lord conferred on Saint Peter the first place of honor and jurisdiction in the government of his whole church, and that the same spiritual supremacy has always resided in the popes or bishops of Rome as being the successors of St. Peter. Consequently, to be true followers of Christ, all Christians, both among clergy and laity, must be in communion with the See of Rome, where Peter rules in the person of his successors. So, I mean, going back, Matthew chapter 16, verses 17 through 19 speaks of what I was talking about, where Jesus said, he said, so one, they say the rock, Peter, is the person in which Jesus is building the church.
Right.
And other times, even same fathers of the church, like Augustine, taught that Petra is his act of faith. So it's a combination of both. But that's what the Catholic Church believes, because that's what Jesus said.
So the Pope. So you're telling me that the Pope now the Pope is swagger. The Pope has his own car. So I'm guessing back then, right, he has that cool car that he drives around in that has the window. You guys looking at me like you've never seen it before.
Yeah,
have you seen the car I'm talking about?
Yeah, and it has a bulletproof.
It has a bulletproof.
Well,
no. Yes, he does, man. Just because you because there was the Pope. They attempted to shoot the Pope back in the day.
I think through trauma and past generations, there was just a thing for protection. But
yeah,
he is a representative of the church. He is not.
He's not. Is he to be worshipped though?
Of course not.
Okay.
And the church. I want to make that clear.
Toes? When they kiss his toes, or
no, they do not kiss his bunions.
No, they
man.
do.
What are you talking about?
No, then they kiss his toes.
It's a sign of reverence. I mean, you have to understand. Priests and popes, bishops, cardinals, they bless they consecrate their hands because that's another thing that we could speak of. I don't know if we have time.
Yeah, we do absolutely.
We believe that when the priest consecrates the bread and the wine, it turns into Jesus Christ in body and soul. And blood. So, and that's something that if you look at tradition, for the first 1,000 years after the death of Jesus, all Christians believed in that, up until the Protestant Revolution, where the people started seeing corruption, and that's something that cannot be denied. There's always been
corruption
in anything, in governments and religious organizations.
Authorities.
So and Jesus spoke of it too in the Bible. He said that his church will be will be invaded by people like that. So
and it has been, and like you said, I think as you mentioned that a while back you had lost your faith, and I'm sure those who are old enough to remember late '90s, early 2000s, the Catholic Church did get hit and suffered. I live in New Hampshire, where there's a large Catholic community. My ex-wife or her family was of Catholic descent, and here's my thing, Michael. When I'm at church,
why you have to give a shout out to your ex-wife?
I didn't give no shout out to her, but listen, I'm a man of faith. You forgive. That's another topic. We'll save it for another day. But here's the thing, Michael. When I go to church, I want to dance, man. I want to feel the Spirit. I want, if God touches me, that body, that soul, that blood hits, I'm ready to church. Can I do that when I go to Catholic church? Can I bust a move and get in?
Sure,
or will I be looked at awkward?
Why not? I mean, my church, I go to St. Peter's here in Danbury, right? Actually, right across the street. That's where I got married.
Okay.
We have masses every day. Every single day you can go to mass and receive the Holy Communion.
All right.
And then we have days throughout the week where we do more of a charismatic type of approach.
Like a service.
Yeah,
Okay.
where you can dance, we play music, we dance, we praise God, and
there's a lot of instructions though in the service at Catholic. Let's stand up, let's sit, let's go ahead and read this. I've enjoyed going to the Catholic Church in trying to understand, Virgin Mary and so forth like that. I feel like there are figures, to your point, that probably relate back to the Bible at one point in time.
Sure. Everything is all backed by not only just scripture but also tradition. Because you have to understand that Jesus never wrote a word. So
it was recorded by others.
It was recorded by others, mostly the disciples. And what happened was, the New Testament wasn't compiled up until about like 300 years after the death of Jesus.
Christ, yeah.
So you have to think about that. That makes you think, like, so how did the early Christians know what the faith was?
We know, yeah.
Well, it was passed down through tradition. The Bible speaks of it,
Yeah.
So
this is interesting, man. I'm learning a lot about the biggest one is me thinking of the Pope and thinking back to you saying that Peter was the first Pope, right? And I look at the Pope now, like I mentioned, we had a Pope who rocked some nice shoes. The Vatican is getting a makeover. I saw something in the news this week. They are going digital. They are doing all these things. My hope is they would preserve all that stuff, because I know that a lot of people, one of their bucket list is to go to the Vatican. Is that something that you'd like to do someday with your family?
Absolutely.
Well, haven't you done it? Didn't you just go to... Oh, no, you went to Paris.
I went to France last year.
I love how you say this so casually. I just went to Paris. I was in Paris just chilling.
But it was on a budget.
Ball on the budget. I ain't mad at
you. No, we're not going to be mad at you. But you know what, man? I just don't want to... I just want to say something, and I'm hoping that all our listeners and they actually understand that bringing Michael here is not to try to scorn him about what.
No, it's to understand.
It's just to understand, and we can go to the deep details of it. He's not representing the church. He's just like a guy that go to a church and actually enjoy what he does. Of which that's the most important thing. Like Ntate said earlier on, that everybody gotta have some sort of faith. Because it keeps you sane, and it kind of gives you a direction, and that's what we need.
And that's what we love about this country.
Exactly.
Let's just say that as we talk about African diaspora and we talk about diasporas in general, one of the freedoms that you have is freedom of religion.
Yeah, freedom of religion.
And it should not be compromised by any means.
Of course.
So shout out to America. We thank you. We are praying for America. We're going through a lot right now.
Yeah, we're going through a lot. Yeah, go ahead.
So I also want to say something. I mean, I'm a practicing Christian, and I consider myself Catholic. But I am in no way in a position to judge anyone and say, because you are not Catholic, you don't believe in Jesus, you are not saved. Because the Bible does not say that. I mean, I believe that at the last moment of your life, you might see the truth. Or maybe you might not. But you lived the honest, truthful life. and God will judge you based on your heart. And I truly believe that. And because if you look at it, I mean, there's still jungles and indigenous people who
that
have
have no access to.
They have no access.
Yeah.
And so you have to understand, how is God going to judge that person because they weren't shown the truth? Well, of course not. I think He would judge them based on their heart, based on what acts of faith did they do, what did they do to this earth, what did they do to their brothers, what did they do to their neighbors.
Exactly. One of the greatest commandments is love God with all your heart, and the second one is just like it, love your neighbor.
Exactly.
Right? So
Michael, brother, I really appreciate
as we love our neighbor, as we love our neighbor.
We love our neighbor.
Yes.
So we're almost at the end of the show, ladies and gentlemen. We're about to wrap up things here at the Home Away Show with Ntate and Kuli on a Sunday. Got Michael as our guest. And Michael, listen up. We have a brother over here, which is a big friend of our show, and
our first guest ever.
Yeah. And the thing is, he just celebrated 21 years in a wheelchair, and he had such an inspiring story for how he got to that wheelchair and things that he has done to turn his life around and make himself one of the greatest speakers that I know myself.
Speakers,
he's really, really good, and he's from South Africa. His name is Musa Zulu. I'm going to present you with his book, and he also has a little bit of art. I'm just going to hand it over to you.
Ah, that's beautiful.
I'll present you with his book. It's actually a really, really good book. And if you can just show it off to the camera over there so that they can actually be able to see it. His name is Musa Zulu, and he will be coming to the United States.
He'll be joining us, right?
The reason why I want you to read that book, and because I knowing you as a person who like to enjoy good things and who like to be motivated and be informed. This actually is probably something you can share with your family or friends and all of that stuff. So that when you come over here, maybe you can be able to bring your family, your friends and stuff to come and actually be able to enjoy that too. So I really appreciate it that you actually came through and they're showing you that. And then another thing too, before we leave, I just want to talk about this because next weekend we have this Africa USA. It's a Christian concert. It's actually a gospel concert. We're going to have one here in the Baptist Church in Danbury in the New Hope. It's organized by some of our brothers too from South Africa. But the good thing about it, they have some crazy, great worship that is going to come through. Some great artists. You know what I mean?
Right now.
I just had to highlight that as part of this show. But another thing too, the reason why I was saying that is because while we were talking about everything that is going on with our families and all of that stuff, and especially with faith, is that the good thing is that to you and everybody that is watching and listening, guys, we need to support the concept. The reason why I'm saying we need to support the concept, with everything that is going on to us as a diaspora, and Michael can echo to this, you always need to have people that bring you back and be able to give you that spiritual healing. Because it kind of helps in terms of moving forward with a lot of things that we are going on as a diaspora and as immigrants. And I'm pretty sure when you, Michael, you guys have somebody of, especially of your own, coming in here from Dominican Republic, and especially if they bring something like this, and it's something that you go behind and support. But I really, really, really appreciate you coming through and rocking with us.
We thank you, man.
Hey, man, I can't really believe. Is there anything else you would like to say before we wrap up the show?
No, just to add on to what you said, I think we should support our fellow brothers and sisters that come from our hometowns, you know, I mean, our
home countries, yeah.
Because most of them come here and they're starting from scratch. So we need to understand that and support it, because a lot of people struggle.
Yeah.
And that's something that we as a culture, not necessarily, I mean, we're from different nationalities, but we should embrace that. And if you look at some nationalities, they embrace their kind.
They do, man. They do.
I mean, we want to talk about like the Jewish people. The Jewish people, they take care of each other.
And there's nothing wrong with it.
There's nothing, of course.
It doesn't mean you're secluding anybody else, man. And you are absolutely right with that. And as we wrap up, man, again, thank you so much. And just to, I don't know if you caught it, Kuli said Musa Zulu is celebrating 21 years of being on a wheelchair. And to close out the show, I want to leave you with some thought. Here's a brother. This was the first time I was on air with Kuli. We interviewed this brother. And I was motivated from there. I said, I cannot stop trying something new. Here was a guy who, and when you read, you'll learn more about him, but he ultimately ended up in a wheelchair. And what he said was he had to make a decision. Do I cry? Do I complain? Do I look at myself as being disabled? Or do I look at myself as being able to conquer whatever it is that I want to? So the fact that somebody is celebrating, which he truly is, he would repeat this himself, he's celebrating 21 years because he's still moving forward. He's made a following in South Africa. He's got an international following. So to anybody who's listening, I would encourage you, whatever it is that you went through in the past week, in the past month, in the past year, maybe 2018 started off in a rough way for you. Celebrate. Celebrate that failure. Celebrate that tough time, because it is what will build your character. It is what you take out of it that will allow you to learn. Mistakes are fine. I'm sure everybody knows that by now. It's just, what do you learn from that mistake? Failing is totally fine. It's how quickly do you come back from that failure, and do you learn and not repeat the same mistake? So we truly appreciate you people joining us today. Everybody listening, we love it when we have guests. I love it when I get to come down to Connecticut and be live in studio. Enjoying my brother Kuli, enjoying meeting Michael. Now I have a new friend also in Connecticut, man. It's been a beautiful weekend. Ladies and gentlemen, please make sure that you tune in next weekend. We shall have a great show.
Yeah, we actually do. And check us out over on Instagram and Facebook, Umbani Radio. And
Yes.
you can check us out also on Twitter, Umbani Radio. And actually watch our, try to listen or download our podcast, actually. We have some great podcasts that we are doing right now. And I really want to talk about them, because the download that we've been getting in that day is incredible, because we're getting people from Frisco, people
San
from Morgan,
Francisco,
from Virginia, and all
New
that stuff. It's incredible. So you can check us out. We're on SoundCloud, Umbani Radio Podcast, and also on iTunes, Umbani Radio Podcast. Umbani Radio is an UMBBANI. So you can actually check us out and see what you give us a review too. You know?
Yes, give us a review. Let us know. We
And this
take criticism,
podcast too will be
feedback.
uploaded by tonight. You can be able to listen to it if you just catch the show.
Absolutely.
Because I can see these people who are watching on Facebook, they just catch some of it right now. So thank you so much. I really
Thank you.
appreciate you. We're going to leave you with Miriam Makeba. And stay blessed, people. We want to see you out there in the concert next week.
Go out there and conquer the week.
I can't wait.
Thank you, guys. God bless.
Thank you
bless.
so much,
Appreciate you, man.
Thank you so much, man.
Nice
Thank
to
you
meet
so
you.
much.
Can we clap hands?
This is good. I like this.
We're done.
Can we clap hands?
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys.
Lovely.
Can I be honest?
It was hard to wake up. I'm not gonna lie.
Kuli was still sleeping, by the way. Kuli thought he was still sleeping right here in the studio.
No, I had to get up here. But I appreciate you, Michael, joining us, man. I really love you, man. You know that. I'm so lucky enough to be surrounded by guys like